Welcome back, everybody. We are back with the way of the Bodhisattva on verse 28. For beings long to free themselves from misery, but misery itself they follow and pursue. They long for joy, but in their ignorance destroy it as they would their foe. Maybe you've noticed this, probably in yourself, right? That we all the time are seeking happiness. Everybody is, all the time. And all of the evil you see in the world and in yourself is just an attempt to get happiness. But all of it is failing miserably, right? The more we pursue pleasure, the more we fight our enemies, the more we argue to defend our position and try to steelman our logic and ego, the more we find ourselves bound up and in pain. Because everything done to reinforce this self sense increases suffering. Because the more separated you feel, the more you have to fight to defend it, and the more you have to grasp and cling at what you want. What we're working towards, bodhicitta, remember, it's an altruistic motivation, but it's mostly openness, right? It's the openness and the softness and the workability. The altruism is what flows out of the openness. When there's no position to defend, then compassion and loving kindness in the four measurables is natural. And this is what you often hear in the higher teachings, that people think that, oh, the higher teachings should automatically produce all of these relative qualities, and they definitely can. But in my experience and in the experience of most people I know, we really have to work at this on a kitchen sink level. We have to work on our ego and work bit by bit with some mind training, right? Because we have these deep grooves of selfish behavior, which means that we can have some insight into emptiness, but then just go right back into our patterns. Because what makes the difference is that emptiness is not nothingness, right? Emptiness is what allows causality to function. That means the stronger your insight into emptiness, the more insight into causality you have. As Guru Rinpoche famously said, although my view is as vast as the sky, my attention to cause and effect is as fine as barley flour. And that's not some kind of kindness or special thing he's doing to help people. He's saying that they go together, right? Like if you have a high view, you do have attention to causality even stronger. That's not, you can't have one without the other. People who claim to have a high view but then cause harm do not have insight into high view, right? Because it would stop them from doing it. The openness, what happens is that we recognize the other synonym for emptiness, which is interdependence, right? Interdependence means that there is no isolated separate self to defend. And if you have insight into that, then that means you feel everything. You feel the other's position and you don't distinguish it from your own position and then therefore protect you and not them. You feel the desire to eliminate suffering in yourself and others equally. And in fact, if you really have insight into this, you have a desire to free it in others first. Why? Because there's more other sentient beings than there is I, right? You are just one sentient being. So of course, countless multitudes of other sentient beings should come before this single one sentient being. So this is the real insight that should come from it. But as you see, we are so confused because we are confused about our identity and because we have this self-fixation, then we actually pursue these things trying to keep reinforcing our sense of self, which is reinforcing our suffering. So we're like a moth to a flame. The moth running into the flame is not stupid. What happened? The moth used to follow the light of the moon, but then candles came into the picture, and now you have this new problem. So at a certain stage of development, as a small child, you need to develop a healthy sense of self, right? Without a sense of self, it would just be mush. You need to have a little bit of this ego I in the Freudian sense. But once that's established, if we keep cranking on that sense of I without going further into interdependence and the truth of it, then it becomes a poison. It becomes a disease, right? So the natural intelligence that we have at this basic level of protecting our body and getting our needs met, etc., oversteps its bounds and becomes the cause of all of our myriad suffering. So it's not that everybody's stupid. It's that everybody has this partial truth, right? They haven't gone far enough. And so we need to gain the insight into how things actually are, this interdependence, and then the suffering will start to reduce because the suffering comes from misapprehension of a sense of self when there is no self. So verse 29, but those who fill with bliss, all beings destitute of joy, who cut all pain and suffering away, from those weighed down with misery, Who drive away the darkness of their ignorance? What virtue could be matched with theirs? What friend could be compared to them? What merit is similar to this? If someone who returns a favor is deserving of some praise, why need we speak of bodhisattvas who do good even unsolicited? And that's what really matters here. See, this isn't like some kind of idea of just being this super helpful person. A bodhisattva recognizes interdependence and therefore acts for the benefit of others without any conditions on it. Most things people do out of kindness is some sense of trade, right? They're looking to either get direct payback for what they're doing, or they're hoping to like feed off the happiness that they give the other person, right? These are the tainted versions of virtue that come with having the three spheres: the sense of self, the sense of receiver, and the sense of the object being given, right? That's part of the delusion. So a bodhisattva doesn't have the delusion of those three spheres. Therefore, giving is inherent to who they are. So it's unconditional help. So we praise somebody who's even done like a small thing. We think that somebody who offers charity in order to feel good and look good, there's all kinds of people running around in the world who have their charitable organizations, and it's, mixed with some actual benevolence, but also because they want to be famous and leave this legacy behind for what a great person and altruistic person they were. But bodhisattvas don't seek any of that. So how much greater are they who just want to benefit every sentient being with no expect of thanks or even the feeling of warmness that comes from it, right? That's not what we're up to here. It has to do with the truth of this uprooting all of our ignorance. By working this path, we are eliminating the suffering of ourselves and others, and we do it because it's the only thing that makes sense, not because we're expecting some kind of payback. So that's the one virtue that can be strong enough to overcome this ignorance, right? The ignorance that says who drive away the darkness of their ignorance? What virtue could be matched with theirs? What friend could be compared to them? What merit is there similar to this? These are all pointing to the greatness of this. And why is it so great? Because it's so true. It aligns with reality, and it's so big that we limit ourselves so much into this tiny little sense of self, which causes us so much misery and causes us so much pain. So, as it goes on in verse 32, people praise as virtuous donors those who with contempt support a few with plain and ordinary food, a moment's gift that feeds for only half a day. I picture like a Disney movie and some villain tosses the bread to the poor people and you're like, oh, he's so helpful, thank you, right? It's nothing compared to this bodhisattva giving. The bodhisattva giving is generous continuously and infinitely. This is something we should all be pursuing. There's nothing greater than this. There's no more amazing and beautiful intention to have in this life. And if you just start trying it on, you'll start seeing immediate benefit for yourself and others. But it's not the kind of benefit that we normally think of. We normally think of pleasure and kind of like accolades and these sorts of things. But you'll notice that even if you get those things, they last for a moment and then they're gone. It's no more beneficial than last night's dream. What is actually beneficial is the uprooting of this self-sense. And as that gets uprooted, then you become this flow of openness and you become the openness. And then if you have teachings in the higher vehicles, you start to really understand what that's about. That's why compassion and loving kindness are part of that highest view. This isn't the preliminary in the sense that this is for beginners and that's for advanced people. This is really the heart of the matter. And there is no higher teaching without this. Without this, you don't have a higher teaching at all. You can have all of shamatha and vipassana, but if you don't have bodhicitta, it won't do this, right? It will only at best accomplish the level of a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha, which is just this temporary stage where you kind of have an extinction of your own suffering, but eventually the suffering of the world will invade and you'll have to deal with that. So we're going to deal with it immediately, right? We have to recognize that the cognitive obscuration of believing that you are a separate being who becomes liberated is part of what needs to be uprooted. And by uprooting that, then we can develop what's called the Rupakaya, right? The form body that benefits sentient beings. We have this other half, right? We need the wisdom and the relative skillful means. We need both. If you don't have both, then you just have an attachment to a concept of emptiness, right? That's not the same as a realization of emptiness, which leads to openness that automatically gives and serves the whole because it's not believing in a sense of self, right? So you can see how this all starts to fit together. and that the very highest teachings are in this. They are completely just a refinement of this. And so there's no skipping it. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope we can continue next time, and have a great evening.